For more now, we're joined by Professor Dirk Kotzé, who's a professor of political science at Unisa, as well as Mzukisi Jam, Sanco spokesperson, and Bhekisisa Mncube, who's a columnist as well. Professor Kotzé, I'll start with you. The ANC frames its 114th birthday around struggle and service from what we gather, yet its vote share fell below 50% in that 2024 election for the first time since 1994. Let's speak about this. In your view, what does this tell us or suggest about the party's ability to connect its liberation legacy with present-day voter concerns, like we've heard?
Yes, good evening. I think, yes, this is one of the main attempts by the ANC to recover or to recoup the losses from not only last year's election, but actually one can go back to at least 2016, was the first local government election where they've lost metros, and then in 2021 again. I think the ANC still believes that that is their unique status, is that of a liberation movement. No other party in their mind can compete with them with respect to that, although we see now the EFF, MK party and others who are actually sort of originating from the ANC, so they can to a large extent claim a similar status. But that, I think, is what the ANC believes is their main attraction, their main selling point, which, for example, the DA or the IFP or other parties don't have. But then, as we have heard now, also in this insert, and what we see from the opinion polls, is that it looks like the public in general, the electorate, have moved in terms of what their considerations in elections are. And it's much more now about personal matters. It's about service delivery. It's about the quality of life. It's about employment. It's about safety. It's about education and so on. So this is a bit of a gamble, therefore, for the ANC if they are going to approach it in that way.
Yeah. Mr. Jam, in the Northwest, potholes and poor service delivery seem to be the order of the day. And like we've heard from residents in the Northwest, many have publicly voiced their frustration with service delivery, even as the ANC campaigns there this week. From Sanco's perspective, how do you respond to citizens who say nothing has changed in that province, despite decades of ANC governance?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having us. Firstly, as Sanco, we would like to congratulate the ANC on its 114th anniversary. It's really quite an achievement for a liberation movement to live for that long. And we believe that, honestly, our lives as South Africans would not have been the way they are or the way they have been if it was not because of the ANC as a liberation movement. We must really applaud and appreciate the work done by the ANC from its inception till to date. However, that does not take away the fact that there has been a number of shortcomings faced by the ANC, including service delivery and a wide range of other social ills. But on the same breath, we must be honest in addressing, in talking about the ANC as the liberation movement. And without sounding as if we are defending the ANC, it was never going to be possible for the ANC to achieve most of the things that it was intending to achieve in the presence of distractors who are still hell-bent in terms of trying to reverse the gains of our democracy and everything else that the ANC has achieved. Typical example, look at the issue of BEE, which some of the organizations are still trying to reverse and are going to as far as taking the organization to courts. So those are the issues that, honestly, we have to be honest with what the ANC has achieved. Yes, of course, without turning a blind eye in terms of the complaints and the challenges that are faced by our people. I agree with the people who have said in Northwest the situation is bad. Yes, it is. I almost fainted when I heard the provincial spokesperson of the ANC claiming that in the Northwest there are no potholes. I can tell you now, I think potholes are designed in Northwest and then are shared to any other provinces, but we are facing a lot of those in our province.
Right.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is that with regards to issues of service delivery, yes, there are a number of issues which, as Sanco, as communities, we are not happy about. Infrastructure, roads, water, and the alarming levels of unemployment in our province, which as Sanco, we again feel that the alarming levels of unemployment in our province are totally not justifiable considering the amount of minerals that we are having as the province. So there is a lot that the ANC has achieved, but on the same breath, there are a number of issues which the ANC seems to be failing in terms of addressing.
Mr. Mncube, let me bring you in. Some analysts argue that the ANC's loss of an outright majority and its need to govern in coalition marks a pivotal point, especially, or a shift rather, in South Africa's politics. How do you see this affecting the party's identity, especially as a liberation movement, now that it must compromise with other parties?
Well, thank you for having me. Exactly the most important point. Why is the ANC still a liberation movement in 2026? I do not think that at the rate that the ANC is conducting its public affairs, that will result into any turnaround. Since 2016, when it became clear that it was now going south, there has not been any behavioral change in the ANC. The ANC still has exactly the same problem that it had in 2016, which is credibility deficit. Nobody believes anything that comes out of Luthuli House. People are not believing it, not because they don't want to, but because their lived experience shows in various ways that there are serious problems in the country that we all know about. One of the biggest is, of course, the issue of unemployment. But it goes beyond that. The second one is that the ANC has its own ideological confusion. The language used, hankering to the past, that is no longer there. Talking about the National Democratic Revolution, can you find me one journalist who can unpack this concept in 20 minutes so that when they write the next article, they can be able to explain to people who rely on the news media for understanding concepts that are difficult. Nobody does. I don't even think the newbies in the ANC, they actually understand what on earth the ANC is talking about. So that's the second one. The third one, obviously, is just the poor leadership, the shallowness of leadership. There's no depth there. You saw this week, Gwede Mantashe was saying people are not looking for jobs, they're just waiting for government. No one is waiting for government. Government has failed the people. No one is waiting for government. When the SAPS advertised 5,000 posts, they got 900,000 applicants. Is that a sign of people who are not looking for jobs? Surely it's not. But because of this entitlement, because of this disconnect between the ANC and the people, it has become increasingly difficult for the ANC to return to the basis, to do what the ANC was launched to do all those 100 years ago. So it is good that they're celebrating a birthday, but the problem is that the ANC comes alive when they are doing the birthday, when someone has died, the stalwarts. But when we're talking about speaking to the future, the ANC is always found wanting. It's a shame.
We're going to take a short break for now. When we return, we continue our conversation, of course, unpacking the experience and also examining the ANC and its role as it meets for the 113th anniversary celebrations, this time happening out in the Northwest. Continuing our conversation with our panel in a short while. Do stay with us. Well, the ANC meets this weekend to deliver its January 8th statement and also celebrating 113 years. And for more, we're still joined by Dirk Kotzé, Professor of Political Science at Unisa. I also have with me Mzukisi Jam, who's a Sanco spokesperson, and Bhekisisa Mncube, who's a columnist as well, to give us his perspective. Professor Kotzé, I'll continue with you now. Coalition politics, for instance, can create both opportunity, but I also assume they can also cause a bit of tension. With a government of national unity involving multiple parties like we're seeing in South Africa, what challenges and opportunities does this structure present, especially for the ANC's governance and policy implementation?
Yes, it has become very tricky for all the parties, starting with the ANC. What we saw last year with, for example, with the budget, how the ANC had to understand what it really meant to be part of a coalition and that they couldn't take decisions on their own. We've seen it also with some of the other issues, policy issues that emerged, for example, the Bella Act, National Health Insurance, and so on, international relations. So for the ANC, I think it is still, or some members of the ANC, it is still very difficult to accept or understand that they are not in control, that they cannot take decisions completely on their own, that there is a form of power sharing that does exist. And that they depend on the other parties, not necessarily only the DA, but in the first instance, the DA, to take decisions and to have approval in Parliament and to win through the processes in government, in the cabinet, as well as in Parliament. So that is, I think, for the ANC, the important learning curve through which they are going. They have been in this position at local level or metro level since 2016. And in other provinces also even before that. But it didn't make the same impact as where they are now in terms of the national government. Take, for instance, the fact that last year after the election, they didn't have a majority in order to elect the president. They have to negotiate with the different parties in parliament in order to reach the 50% plus one. If they want to recall President Ramaphosa, for example, they will have to do the same again. And whoever is going to be a candidate, if they put together, again, it will become a negotiated process. It's not something that the ANC can decide in the NEC or any of its other fora that they have. So these are all part of the implications. When we look at the way in which they have to share also the achievements of the party, for example, whether it is home affairs or public works or some of the other portfolios that are where the minister is coming from the DA and they have successes, then the ANC can't claim it immediately as their success. So it's a completely new ballgame, and I think the ANC still finds it very difficult, as well as to be able to go back now to the electorate in this coming election to claim credit for that. And I think what will even complicate it more is that in this election, the parties, the 10 parties of the Government of National Unity are going to compete against each other in the campaigning process for the votes of the electorate. They can't go collectively to say this is our achievement or we collectively take responsibility for the problems. And so again, it's a completely new ballgame that I don't think any of the parties are yet very much used to.
It's a completely different ballgame. Mr. Jam, I'll bring you back in. Sanco, as we know, operates close to communities in South Africa. Have you heard more calls for unity, for improved governance, for instance? Or is there this deeper skepticism and call for alternative leadership? To put it more directly, what do people tell you on the ground?
Well, firstly, for us as communities, what is important is service delivery, change in people's lives for better, improvement in terms of people's lives, and also being able to address the social ills which are haunting us as communities. So that's what matters to us as communities. But with the current arrangement of the GNU, which is, if you like, you would call it your marriage of convenience. We don't see that happening. I think we were hopeful when this GNU was proposed as Sanco to say perhaps there will be a change because there has been a number of challenges. But to our dismay, what we are experiencing is the same thing that we experienced even during the ANC government era. We are still having a situation where parties within the very same GNU are still facing allegations of misuse of state resources, corruption, and so forth. Then that tells you that, well, there is actually no one who's better than the other when it comes to the very same political organizations which are supposed to be leading us, which leaves us as communities on our own. But the other challenge that we picked up as Sanco was that, which we found very interesting, was how was the ANC going to work with organizations that are totally differing with it in terms of ideologies. You've got the same organizations which are trying to reverse the gains of our democracy, challenging the very same gains of our democracy, taking the government to court. And those are organizations which are part of the government of national unity. So that tells you that there is no progress which we'll ever make, because the organizations which are supposed to be taking the country forward are actually taking us backwards. It has stopped being about us. Everything now is about themselves. That's why they fight among each other, even in this so-called government of national unity, which is not, any different as compared to the government of the ANC, which is the government of the previous era. So there's really no difference. Basically what I'm trying to say is that we are at the receiving end of all of these shenanigans that are taking place. And the people's lives on the ground are actually getting worse than improved. So we are moving backwards instead of moving forward. That is the feeling on the ground.
Yeah, Mr. Mncube, we have heard that it seems we are moving backwards, but critics are also arguing that internal corruption within the ANC, issues around factionalism, but also service-related issues, service delivery failures, have really eroded the trust in the ANC's brand. Do you think that anniversary statements and pledges of renewal, like what we've heard, can realistically reverse that trend?
People will be yawning on Saturday. You know, it's very sad, because the ANC is a country that for many years were pursuing the struggle for national liberation. I do not think there's anyone of my age who will celebrate the death of the ANC. That will be very ahistorical. But let me give you just one example. In fact, two. One is the late Kara Asman put a lot of millions of rands in water infrastructure in Ulundi, in the rural areas there. Outside my ancestral home, there was a tap that water was gushing out. It was clean. 10 years ago, that scheme collapsed. Why? Because there's this new thing now. Everybody must have a tanker, and they must bring us water using a tanker, if the municipality still has money to hire those guys. So that's just one. But the second one, which is the most, it makes absolutely no sense, actually. I don't want to say it's sad. Why are we having something called unemployed doctors? Let me give you an example why that does not make sense. Doctors, by the ANC's hand, were asked to do community service before they graduate. Now, they have completed academic work. They need to be in a hospital to complete the degree, but the ANC will not employ them. But there is money for other things. There's money for, what is this thing, national dialogue. I don't know why they call it national. And then, of course, it is not just about the doctors only. It's also about the teachers. For teachers, even worse. You have two funding streams for teacher training, one from NSFAS and one from the Department of Basic Education. Why do you have two? I don't know. Once people qualify, the posts are not there. I know two people in my family who have been waiting for posts to be teachers for 7 years. How can you tell that person that there's going to be local government elections and please, this is our movement, is the leader of a society, we have to go and vote. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The other daughter of mine, she chose to do farming at TVET College. She completed record time, 18 months, done. You know what? She hasn't graduated 18 months later. You know why? Because she cannot find in-service training, which is a requirement for her to graduate. So these are basic things at a local level that affect real people, not numbers. And the ANC knows about this. The ANC fails in so many levels, in terms of service delivery, in terms of addressing corruption. But something that I cannot understand is why the ANC has even now failed to communicate. In politics, sometimes optics, sometimes they can push you over the line. The ANC has a poor record in communication. It started during the days of Polemabi. I'm glad, Nhlanhla, you're not a youngster. You know when the thing started going south. And I never thought that if something goes south, it could just never return, you know? And you ask yourself the question, everybody knows and watches what the Democratic Alliance does when it comes to communication. It's not rocket science. It can be done by anybody. Some of it does not even require money. Well, DA does deploy a lot of money, but there's neither here nor there. So the ANC has many, many, many problems, and I don't think they can reverse the decline at 40% now. The ANC funeral is going to be in two parts. There's going to be one this year, which will be a local funeral, not a state funeral. And then when we go to the national elections, that will be a state funeral for the ANC. The ANC we loved, the ANC we worked for, the ANC that has done tremendous work during the struggle against apartheid. Sadly, this is the end of the road.
That's a very grim synopsis there, as Mr. Mncube predicting that this might possibly sign to or signal the demise of the ANC as well. Do stay with us. In a short while, we'll be getting final thoughts from our guests or panelists this evening as the conversation around the ANC celebrating its 114th birthday continues, with the party also set to deliver its January 8th statement on Saturday. We're still talking all things ANC as the party celebrates its 114th birthday this week, also delivering its January 8th statement with the party leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, expected to unpack its plans for the year in that speech expected on Saturday. Continuing our discussion right now with our panelists, Professor Kotzé, going back to you. So the ANC's decline in support, it has opened space for new political players, notably the Umkhonto weSizwe party, especially in provinces like KZN, for instance. Let's speak about this. How significant is this for the ANC's future electoral strategy from what you're seeing?
Yes, I think what we have seen last year in terms of the results and with respect to MK party specifically, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, and to some extent Gauteng, will most possibly be the provinces where the MK party will register support. In KwaZulu-Natal, I think they will continue what they've done last year and will be very dominant in the province. So for the ANC, this is at the moment they are in a sort of a survival mode, if they can be. But I think they are prepared for a very, very tough time, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. The other parties, that relatively new parties, I would say, are going to struggle because local government elections are different from national and provincial elections. In the sense that you need much more of an embedded infrastructure, party infrastructure. And that affects, for example, a party like Africa Moebuye, Floyd Shivambu, and others that are relatively new. They haven't got that infrastructure yet. It's easier to campaign at the national or provincial level than at the local level, which is more specific, which is more localized. And you need more people, and you need more infrastructure, and you need more money. And none of them do have that. So my expectation is that smaller parties will struggle in this coming election. And that even includes parties like Action SA, Patriotic Alliance, and others. They've done relatively well in last year's election really comparative terms. But here it is about whether you can win, for example, a constituency. And the pattern is that only the big parties are at this stage successful in winning constituencies. The smaller parties receive seats based on the proportional representation. But that is the test, and that's where the ANC and especially the DA and other parties have been more successful than the other parties. So I expect that it's going to be an uphill struggle for the small parties also.
Yeah. Mzukisi, Sanco has long worked with the ANC, but also working with its alliance partners. How do you view as Sanco these tensions within the tripartite alliance, especially with the SACP deciding to contest elections separately from the ANC this time around?
Well, we do understand the resolution or the decision taken by the SACP to contest elections. And obviously the tension between the alliance is not good for everyone or for all the parties within the alliance. And there is nothing much that we can say about the decision of the SACP to contest elections independently. It's their conference resolution, and we are of a very strong view that it's a resolution that they thought through, and they decided that this is the route that they want to take. As Sanco, we would have preferred that any sort of differences within the alliance could be resolved without parties within the alliance, going sideways, and that is informed by the work that the parties within the alliance have managed to do all these years. But of course, we can never turn a blind eye on the reason or on what made some parties within the alliance uncomfortable and decided to go and go individually. One of those reasons is the arrogance of the ANC leadership, which it has displayed for as long as I can remember. Typical example, in Northwest, at some point, the leadership of Sanco had to even disengage from ANC activities simply because the ANC could not be corrected. And that is one of the biggest weaknesses of the ANC, is that even when they are corrected by us as parties within the alliance, they feel that at times they have everything under control. And that is exactly what has led to where we are today. So it's not good for everyone what is currently happening. And the local elections are at the doorstep, and we can only hope that the masses or the citizens of this country would be able to do what is in their best interests. Because as I said, as Sanco, our responsibility is bread and butter issues, improvement in terms of the livelihood of our own people. So that, as and when communities or citizens decide to do what is in their best interest, what is left as our responsibility is to stand with them, because we're not a political party, but a community-based organization. So we'll always be with our people, regardless of where they are.
Mr. Mncube, let me get your final thoughts. We are fast running out of time, but given the rise of opposition parties and local by-election losses for the ANC in some wards, as we've seen, what do you think these shifts tell us about citizen priorities, but also speaking to issues around their dissatisfaction?
Well, people are beginning to think about what affects them at the local level. That is why the shift is beginning to be more pronounced. In any event, it began at a local level in 2016, when the ANC became a rural party, when it lost all the significant metros. So that is not going to change, but people who are going to be gaining are the ones who are speaking one language or the other that seems to resonate with the people. The Patriotic Alliance, for instance, will continue to be on the rise because the minister is a happy chappy there. he says all the right things, and he keeps his message is on point that the illegal immigrants must go. And there's a whole movement around that, beyond just the Patriotic Alliance. So, and people see this at a local level, where in Durban, for instance, there's a road where in the morning, the traffic just comes to a standstill because of the people, illegal foreigners who are walking to the city center. It's a sorry sight, but it's also because of a failure of politics. It's not because the issue of immigration is a South African thing. I mean, it's a global thing. But if we were doing our politics right, we were not going to have that. As for the South African Communist Party willing to contest elections on their own.
Very quickly, if you may.
We clap for them. We clap for them. They have been a leech for this long. It's now time for them to grow up. They don't even have a leader. They haven't had a leader since the days of Doslovo and Chris Hani. They've been on autopilot. Let them have elections on their own. No one is going to be giving them money. And we can call them nicely a political pipsqueak, to use the language last used by the former IFP leader, Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi.
Bhekisisa Mncube, thank you so much for giving us your perspective. Dirk Kotzé as well, Professor of Political Science at Unisa. And joining us from Sanco was Mzukisi Jam, of course Sanco being an alliance partner of the ANC as it heads towards its celebrations, which reached fever pitch on Saturday, with the party delivering its January 8th statement.